So I cannot wait for you to experience it with us. It's an amazing journey.
And that night, the preacher was talking about people that had been distracted from the path. Wow. And a light bulb went on. I was born again. I received that as revelation. I knew that it was God speaking to me, and what God said was all of this pursuit of trying to find the name was instantly in my mind, like snapshots of all the things I had pursued. And hearing the name Jesus in this first time, in this context of, he's not this person to debunk, he is Lord and Savior. Mm-hmm. I felt God in my spirit say, you weren't prepared to hear that name, and I was not prepared to give you away. Mm. And right then, it was very clear to me of these realms, the occult, what God says about that, and how that Jesus was my Lord and Savior, my Savior before I ever knew it. Because some really bad things could have happened to me, and they didn't. So I gave my life to him that night.
Do you feel like you still have a clear context for what life was like for you, or just what your perceptions were, perspective was prior to being born again?
Yeah, I absolutely do.
So like, in other words, you can still relate to that person. And do you see it in other people now?
Absolutely. Especially here in Hollywood. Part of my calling to ministry was specifically to the entertainment industry. And so that's a significant part of my adult life. And there are so many people that are so open spiritually and aware that there is something transcendent around us. I think there's very few atheists. There's probably a lot more agnostics. But I think you got to go a long way before you find someone that says, I do not, I will not, I don't want to hear, I'm set against this. I think part of, the artistic community, when you're working with, actors and writers and directors and cinematographers and people that are involved with creating truth, beauty, transcendence, that's a very thin place between art and God. Yeah. And that's what I was called to, is to be a translator.
And I think that's the point, because, in a sense, is it a blessing in your mind that you had the journey, that you didn't just grow up and stay there the whole time, but you can see through the lens of people who are also maybe in pain or searching or feel that void in their life. And maybe, especially in people who are in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. So what is it like to minister to them?
If there are people of faith, then you minister in that shared faith, where, we point to faith, hope, and love, and live in that, and remind each other, like, oh yeah, that is who I am. That is what I believe, and I believe it in a way that reorients me to whatever realities I'm facing. When you're in relationship with people that haven't had an experience with a transcendent, personal God. Their only experience of that is who you are. How are you in relationship with them, in integrity and honesty, in authentically caring? And I'm so glad that God actually opened a door to being a talent agent for me before ministry, because it sounds funny, but I think a heart of ministry was born out of being a talent agent. As a talent agent, you are an advocate for someone else 24/7. You are seeking their best interest. You are trying to help what they most want in life come to fruition. And when they shoot themselves in the foot, you're the one that leaps in front of it and say that they didn't do that, that was my fault. And something that was very profound for me in being someone's representative. And if you just think of that word, I am your representative. I'm going to stand for you when I talk about you in this industry. And that's akin to who Jesus is. Jesus is our representative when it comes to taking the full brunt of what we should have taken, of this judgment of God. Jesus says, I'm going to step in front of that for you, and I'm going to represent you to God out of my righteousness, and that's who God's going to see. So I know you probably don't get many people comparing talent agents to Jesus, and certainly not to over religionize or Christianize my role, but it was a place where there was ministry that nobody knew was ministry. It's just, how are you loving that person?
Well, it's a unique place to be because, if we're dealing with Hollywood, you're dealing with celebrities, you're dealing with industry that influences culture, right? And the masses, and that could have political implications, right? It has moral implications. It has, all kinds of impact on generations and how they're going to behave or what they're going to think. So how do you see it? And what is it like? Because this is a very unique position to be in Hollywood doing what you're doing, having the background, of, like you said, as being a talent agent and a casting agent, et cetera, having that background and now saying, okay, I've got a different calling, but yet you're bringing this calling back to the group or the culture from which you came. So can you describe that a little bit, because it's very unique?
Well, I'll try, yes. One of the first things when we started this ministry, 2 and 4 people working in the entertainment industry, of, God always seeks us. And so we wanted to be a church that seeks people who think that the church might not want to have anything to do with them. So that was just living an incarnational ministry. But one of the first things that we really landed on was focusing on significance in Hollywood. So much of the mindset in Hollywood is on success. How can I be successful? And you're rewarded for success, and people love you when you're successful, and they drop you like a hot potato as soon as you're not. And people get very objectified in Hollywood. You're an object. You're either, as an agent, I'm either an obstacle or a tool that's gonna help somebody get where they wanna go. And we objectify people all the time in the entertainment industry. We buy and sell people, and when you hire an actor, that's what you're doing. You are looking at them and dehumanizing them in some ways by saying, this color of hair works better than that color of hair, or whatever. Significance is not related to success. You can be significant when you're standing in line at Trader Joe's and you help that person pick up whatever they just dropped. Or, their child's crying, and rather than giving them a dirty look, you actually try to help them. Right. It's something that inhabits every minute of who you are, so that for people, success in Hollywood comes and goes. You can be at the top of your game and a year later have nobody returning your calls. And if those are your circumstances, you can lose your identity quickly. Significance grounds you always. You never lose your identity. When you are focused on why God has you in certain places, be they great circumstances or lousy circumstances, there's something that adds significance to your life and through your life than to every encounter that you have. When you talk about influence, culture is upstream of politics. You know, there's so many people that lobbyists in Washington are there to affect platforms and laws. But before you can affect laws, you have to affect people's thinking. What are they passionate about and why? Well, it's stories that help shape what we love, what we believe. Humanity, from the longest time that we can remember, we have told stories. Stories that shape our reality, that bring reality into focus. And so it's, when we think of story, sometimes you can think of, oh, that's made up.
Right.
Or actually story, the mega narrative of humans, is so anchored in who we are and what we will die for. We die for conceptual things a lot of the time. And so when Hollywood produces stories, they can be humanizing or they can be dehumanizing. So I'm not using right or wrong or good or bad, but do I feel more profoundly human as a result of that story, or do I feel somehow more objectified? Either how I feel or what I just watched. And there are so many people here in Hollywood who aren't even necessarily people of faith that are telling very humanizing stories, that are reaching for something profound about the human spirit. And when Christians can point to those stories and say, that's the God we serve, we don't have to make movies that have a certain perspective. We just need to point to truth when we see it. And to say, that's the God that I know. So part of our ministry is coming alongside these incredible stories that are being told. And speaking of God, they're interrelated without being one and the same. And in there is how we can influence culture.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.